Welcome to the selfgrowth.com show. My name is David Riklan, and I'm the founder of selfgrowth.com. Today, we'll be discussing Buteyko Breathing for balancing stress, overcoming anxiety, sleep apnea, enjoying optimal sleep, and oxygenation of the whole body. A lot of health benefits, and we'll get into that. To help us understand this topic, I'm excited to interview Teya Skae. Make sure to listen closely. We're going to be sharing a lot of information today. Before we get started, I want to take a couple of minutes and share some information about Teya. And it's Teya Skae, and you can jot this down. It's a unique spelling, T-E-Y-A, and her last name is Skae, S-K-A-E. Teya is a nutritional strategist and Buteyko breathing instructor. Teya specializes in individualized biochemical nutrition to overcome burnout, anxiety, panic attacks, hormonal imbalances, and chronic degenerative conditions. She also helps people with chronic pain. As a competitive athlete and fitness enthusiast for most of her life, Teya understands how challenging life can be when we reach burnout and how confusing and daunting it is to find the right solutions amidst an ocean of confused misinformation from both medical and alternative fields. As a result of overcoming her own health challenges, Teya connects the dots and gets to the root cause of all symptoms faster than a speeding bullet. And we're going to get into some of these techniques. Her ongoing research into mind-body nervous system connection led her to Buteyko Breathing, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, as the missing link to optimal health. She brings a wealth of knowledge and a history of achievement to her clients with her ideal solutions, and talk a little bit about that, an integrated approach to treating root causes instead of micromanaging symptoms. And I'd like everybody, first, welcome to the show.
Thank you, David. Great to be here. We're going to have some fun with this.
All right, sounds good. So I want to do a couple of things before we jump in. I want to give out a website for everybody because you're going to want to follow up with Teya. There's a lot of interesting things we're going to be talking about today. So her website is Teya Skae, and that's
.com,
teyaskae.com. And relative to the topic of Buteyko, you'll find information by going to teyaskae.com/advanced-Buteyko. And Buteyko spelled B-U-T-E-Y-K-O. All right, you ready to jump in?
Absolutely.
All right. I'm going to start with a very simple question. I've said it 3 or 4 times already, Buteyko breathing. So what is Buteyko breathing?
The purpose of Buteyko is to oxygenate the whole body. That's really what it is. But where it becomes controversial is that we have been made to believe for years and decades that oxygen is good and carbon dioxide is bad. And that's not the case. And it has been proven physiologically with Bohr's law. Christian Bohr is a Danish physicist who discovered that in order to get more oxygen to our tissues, to the brain, to the liver, to the kidneys, wherever it's needed, to the muscles for recovery, we actually need a certain amount of carbon dioxide in the blood and in the lungs. So we need both oxygen and carbon dioxide in order to distribute oxygen around the body. Now, to most people, that's like, because we are taught that carbon dioxide is a waste product, but it's not, because if we expel all the carbon dioxide from our lungs, all the oxygen we have in the blood is not available. And so people experience what's called air hunger. They want to breathe more. So the purpose of Buteyko is to oxygenate the whole body, improve circulation, and in the process, it balances 200 biochemical pathways.
Interesting.
So that's pretty exciting when you think what it can improve if we do this daily. Now, Buteyko is not something that you do on a Sunday and then you do it again on a Wednesday. It is retraining your whole breathing pattern, because we learn how to breathe from our environment. We also inherit breathing patterns from our parents. If we have anxious parents or parents that are mouth breathers, chances are we're going to inherit some of those patterns. So Buteyko teaches you to breathe less and to breathe quietly and to breathe through the diaphragm and to breathe through the nose 24/7. And when I work with people who have multiple symptoms, I look at their breathing and I go, wow, that's a whole foundation that no one has pinpointed. They're either mouth breathers, or they breathe too much, or they speak too fast. And these people have symptoms of sleep apnea or asthma or allergies or other issues or anxiety. And how did breathing slip through the cracks? How is it that all the different specialists didn't pick up that people have a breathing problem that's contributing, if not creating, a lot of serious conditions?
So I just want to unpack some of the things you said there, because you put a lot of information out. Well, one of the first things that really jumped at me that people don't think about it is there's an optimum balance of oxygen and carbon dioxide. That in our minds, you're always brought up saying, more oxygen better, better, pure oxygen. But what's interesting is, sometimes you see someone, they give someone pure oxygen, but you can't just breathe in pure oxygen all the time. Yeah, that's not a healthy thing to do. So what I find interesting is that you really, and with the Buteyko breathing method, figured out there is a way to reach kind of ideal balance in terms of oxygen coming in. And I've been hearing a lot more about nose breathing, because you're right, a lot of people breathe, constantly breathing through their mouth. They're not breathing through their nose. And I would imagine there's a lot of benefits. So what it sounds to me, based on what you're telling me, is this something that you define as good breathing versus bad breathing. And you started going into a little bit. Can you delve a little bit deeper into what would be the kind of the good breathing versus the bad breathing?
Yes, it's very simple, and you could see it and you could hear it. So good breathing is someone who breathes through the nose 24/7, and they sleep with nose breathing. So these people do not snore. If someone snores, it's bad breathing.
Right.
Good breathing is diaphragm, so the chest is not moving. It is quiet breathing. So if you're sitting next to them, you're not going to hear them breathing laboredly. There's also no sign of breathlessness. And their conversation is fairly balanced. Someone who speaks very quickly and they're rushing and they have to take a big breath, that is bad breathing. That is breathlessness. And just as a side note, a lot of personal development coaches and speakers tend to speak very fast,
right.
Which is actually stressful. It overwhelms the listener. They can't catch up. Right. And they're also coming from their own stressed environment. Whereas people like Brian Tracy, who speaks very slowly and articulately, has the perfect breathing pattern. I could listen to him for hours and I actually pick up the information he's saying. So that's good breathing. Now, bad breathing is mouth breathing. It is blocked nose breathing. If someone has a blocked nose, they'll breathe through the mouth. That'll make the situation worse.
Right.
Breathing through the chest, breathless, or just generally having their mouth open, just when they're listening to someone. Like, often you see people just with their mouth open without even knowing it. So they're losing carbon dioxide, which means they're not getting enough oxygen. So that's the difference.
All right. It's interesting. You touched on this earlier when you talked about overbreathing being so bad. We've always thought oxygen is supposed to be good for us. Why else? Can you kind of extrapolate a little bit about other reasons why just pure oxygen and breathing in oxygen isn't that good for us?
In simple terms, it leaves us depleted of oxygen in our tissues. So overbreathing, and technically called hyperventilation, reduces oxygen delivery to the brain, to the heart, to the kidneys, because it doesn't have carbon dioxide in the blood to distribute oxygen. And so we have to go back to Bohr's law. And Bohr's law states that blood is carried in hemoglobin in our blood. So 98% of the oxygen is bound in hemoglobin. Right. But the bonds between oxygen and hemoglobin are tight. They're tight bonds. And so people can get thick blood just from all the oxygen and all the over breathing. So when carbon dioxide enters the bloodstream, it splits the bonds between hemoglobin and oxygen. And so oxygen becomes available readily. And how we feel it, there's a dilation. We feel warm.
Mm-hmm.
The capillaries open up. So that's why we need the carbon dioxide in order to distribute oxygen purely from Bohr's law, which we cannot refute.
Right. So basically the carbon dioxide is really helping with the release and the distribution of the oxygen.
Exactly. It's just a challenge for us to accept it when we have been made to believe that it's so bad for us and that it's toxic and we should be exhaling it. I think that's where the confusion lies for most people.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, I heard of something called the oxygen paradox. What exactly is the oxygen paradox?
Yes, basically, we need oxygen. But if we take in too much, we rust, we oxidize. And that's what happens to our body. When people breathe in too much, their capillaries close and they literally suffocate. It's called hypoxia. Mm-hmm. It's like if you cut an apple and you leave it for a couple of minutes, it goes brown.
Right.
That's exactly what it is. It's called rusting. So we rust on the inside.
All right. It's interesting because that's typically not how people are thinking, but I can see that impact. So let's get back into Buteyko, the concept of Buteyko. So Buteyko breathing sounds like it could really impact quite a few things. And one of the things that I've heard it helps with is anxiety or panic attacks. So how does Buteyko breathing help with something like an anxiety or panic attack?
Yes. So the breathing center, from where we have a biochemical and biomechanical urge to breathe, is in the reptilian brain, in medulla oblongata. Mm-hmm. And that's where the panic and anxiety also stem from, the reptilian brain. And it's to do with the adrenaline, fight, flight. So we know that the quickest way to change from a stress response, sympathetic dominant, anxiety, breathing too much, breathlessness, mm-hmm. to parasympathetic relaxation, calmness, is with the breathing. You change the breathing. You get the person to breathe through the nose. Mm-hmm. You slow down their breathing. And so people that have panic and anxiety attacks usually end up hyperventilating a lot. So if they were practicing Buteyko daily basis, they would prevent a panic attack because they're right there in the breathing center where the stress response is originating.
Okay, that makes sense. What I find interesting also about what you said with this Buteyko and specifically nose breathing, because that's a core facet of Buteyko, is really training the body how to do nose breathing, is that you can teach yourself, even though you're doing it during the day, you can almost teach your body while you're sleeping to do it. Which
Yes, the awareness is the first thing. Mm-hmm. As soon as people become aware how they breathe and how it affects them, their mind is onto it. So that's great. The second thing is that in Buteyko, we have different exercises. There are at least 7 to 8 exercises that we are given to do based on our unique conditions. If someone has asthma, they're on medication, or someone is a gymnast, it's going to be different exercises, different outcomes, mm-hmm. Different routine. And so people really do need a certified Buteyko instructor, because if you don't know what you're doing and you just want to be ambitious and just oxygenate the whole body and you hold your breath for too long, you can actually get a migraine and palpitations, and it feels unpleasant. I've done it. Sure. I've done it myself. At that point, I said, right, I'm getting an instructor. Mm-hmm. And so we need to be careful, because the breathing center is located in that part of the brain which basically doesn't feel comfortable with big changes. And if we introduce big changes, we start to hyperventilate as well.
Okay, that makes sense. I want to switch topics for a little bit. So I've heard of another breathing method. So I've heard of Buteyko, but I also remember hearing about this Wim Hof, based on Wim Hof breathing. Well, what's, there's a lot of attention on what's the difference? How do they fit in? What's Wim Hof versus Buteyko?
Yes, Wim Hof is called the Iceman for a reason, because he exposes himself in minus 20, 30-degree temperatures where he sits and meditates shirtless. Now, in order to do that, he builds up his breathing technique to activate adrenaline. So his breathing technique, I think it's called the tumor inner fire breathing, is where people take 30 big breaths through the mouth, and then they hold their breath for as long as they can. And so they build up a lot of adrenaline, a lot of heat in the body, and then they expose themselves to the cold. That's hyperventilation. That is a wonderful thing to do if you are going out into minus 20 degrees and you are climbing Mount Everest. It's not something you want to be doing 24/7. So for people that have asthma or sleep apnea, and they already hyperventilate, Wim Hof is going to increase their hyperventilation. The other thing is that in Buteyko, exposing ourselves to cold temperatures is very beneficial, but not everyone should be doing it. It's for people that can hold their breath comfortably on the exhale for 25 seconds. That's not a lot of people. Those are the people that are ready to do what Wim Hof does. If they can't hold their breath for 10 seconds or 15 seconds, these people are going to get a cold or a flu. They're going to experience adrenal exhaustion after doing something like that.
All right. So you mentioned hyperventilating a few times. How can you tell if someone's hyperventilating, you know, even if they're not mouth breathers? So how can you tell if someone's doing, or you're doing that? How would you know?
Yes, you will see their chest move, and you will also see them take one big breath every couple of minutes. Deep breathing. They would also sigh. They could be yawning a lot, and they will just be basically talking, but then they're going to take a big breath in to air hunger. You can also test them. You can do what's called a CP test. It's called control pause. You exhale, you hold your nose, and how comfortably someone can hold their nose and not breathe basically says how much carbon dioxide they have in their blood and how well they're distributing their oxygen. So it's like a oxygen tank test. And I do that with my clients, really, just to basically let them know what their breathing is like.
Yeah, it's interesting the way you're describing hyperventilating, where it's like you're trying to periodically, you're catching your breath. I see a lot of people doing this almost more. Why do you feel, why are more and more people hyperventilating that today?
According to Buteyko, he said that the reason people breathe too much is because we are rushing. We are rushing to the next thing. And we're greed. That was his words. Greed for time, greed for money, greed for things. So we're living in the future. And remember, the breathing center is located in that part of the brain that deals with stress. So if someone's rushing, if someone's worried, if someone is anxious about something, they're going to start to breathe more. And that becomes a normal pattern, usually with mothers that have kids and they've got a lot of activities. You know, they have the music, the ballet, they have to pick them up at 3:30. There's like all these time schedules, tight schedules. Usually these are the people that hyperventilate just because they're living in the future.
Okay, that makes sense. I can see that. Another issue that I see a lot is elderly people having more issues. Well, why do elderly people have more issues with breathing? Why is that? Why does it change?
Well, as we age, our lungs actually shrink. So that changes the whole carbon dioxide and oxygen relationship in itself. And if people are taking medication, that can also affect the breathing. Some medications overstimulate. Coffee, a high protein diet could also make people hyperventilate. So it's really interesting when you start doing Buteyko exercises daily, you start to see how anything and everything affects your breathing. It becomes so obvious. And of course, you tone it down. You have the ability to prevent that because breathing is at the foundation. You know, if we don't get the breathing right, I doubt that doing a lot of therapies and a lot of modalities is going to make a difference if someone's breathing is so labored that they're on the CPAP machine, they're breathing through the mouth during the day. I just don't see how other things are going to help.
That makes sense. So we really focus, a lot of times we've been coming back and forth on the importance of kind of nose breathing. Are there exercises to kind of unblock the nose so we can start and focus and do more nose breathing?
Yes, and that's a really good one to start, because most people say, oh, my nose is blocked, or I have a deviated septum. There is an exercise to unblock the nose. And you do that a couple of times to unblock the nose. And then basically you can start nose breathing. And I just want people to be really careful if they're going to try this with us, to not overdo it. Because if you do this for too long, you can enter the zone of hyperventilation. So David, we could do it together if you like.
Let's do it together. I'm ready.
Okay, so what I need you to do is you would exhale, you would block your nose, and you would keep your mouth closed. And we're going to be moving our head slowly, say 4, 5 times.
Well, if I'm exhaling, so let me just get this straight. I'm closed, my mouth's closed. I'm exhaling, but I'm holding my nose. So how am I exhaling if I'm holding?
So I'll just do it.
I'm not closing my nose, but I'm holding it.
You are closing your nose. You're blocking your nose.
Okay. So I'm not actually breathing out. I'm kind of blowing out.
That's right. You're not. Yeah, you see, some people cheat. They take a breath in and then they hold their breath. Well, I can do that for 2 minutes. You can do that for 2 minutes. But we're doing it on the empty. We're exhaling and then we're blocking our nose.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So we'll do it 4, 5 times maximum, okay? And then after we finish, I invite you to still keep your mouth closed. I can talk. You keep your mouth closed, just to get the benefit of that carbon dioxide that you have built up in the blood. So you can tell us how you feel. Ready?
Yep.
Okay, let's go. Now, I like to contain the breathing for as long as I can, because I feel the dilation and I feel the opening up. And that's what people need to feel in order to open up the nose and unblock it. And you would probably do that 3, 4 more times. For some people, it'll just be 3 times. For others, it could be 5. And that should do it. Because if we have a blocked nose and we continue to breathe through the mouth, we're making the whole situation worse. It's like a circle that feeds on itself.
It's interesting. It reminds me of what I might do when I'm coming down a flight, because when you're landing on a flight, sometimes you need to decompress. You know, you can feel the pressure building up, and this kind of exercise is the only way to kind of clear you and decompress. But the interesting thing about it is the only time I've ever done that is when I'm landing on a plane, when the plane's coming down very fast and I feel it blocked up. And it works very effectively when I'm doing that. But I've never thought to do it outside of that experience.
Yes, that's right. You know, Buteyko was a medical doctor. He was a professor during the communist regime. So he didn't need the funding. He had privileges. He worked on 250,000 people, including the Russian cosmonauts that went up to space. And that was his discovery. It was purely not looking for another technique. It was just purely working on people. And he noticed that the sickest people had the worst breathing, had labored breathing. And the healthiest people breathed very little and could hold their breath for a long time.
Right.
That was his discovery. And so when he shared that, most doctors in the medical profession actually took away his license.
Interesting.
Sounds very familiar, doesn't it?
Yes, yes. Well, so relative to the work you do, I know you work with people and there's other exercises and other things you can do. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you work with people relative to Buteyko, and then how people can get in touch with you?
Well, most of the time people come to me as a last resort. I'd love to change that. It's either referral or they might read something or see a YouTube. And so by the time they come to me, they don't just have one symptom, they have about 10 or more. And these people are smart people. They realize that somewhere there's a root cause.
Right.
Someone is not addressing the root cause, why these symptoms are not getting better, getting worse, and they're taking medication or they need surgery. So my job is to firstly identify that root cause, because that's the one thing I guarantee. I will get to the root cause. You might not want to work with me or continue, but you will know what the root cause is. And it's a combination of working with the biochemistry and then also working with the nervous system where the breathing center is located, so that the whole person is addressed in a complete way, so that we're not doing modalities and therapies and protocols. I really don't like those anyway, but we're dealing with at the root cause. And then that's how people get well, slowly and surely. And breathing is very important for people that are not sleeping. For whatever reason, if they had surgery, they have pain, they need to get that optimal sleep. And that's when I bring in aspects of Buteyko breathing and make them aware that there's no way they're gonna rejuvenate, recover if they're not sleeping well. And to sleep well, you need to breathe well. You need to breathe through the nose. And if anyone's on a CPAP machine, my job is to get them off it in 45 days or less, which I have to date.
That's
so
great.
Basically, it's someone has issues, digestive issues, hormonal issues, and they're all piling up. That's when I could help you.
Okay.
I like if it's just I just want to lose 20 kilos because I want to fit into the bikini, and they don't really want to do any changes, then probably I'm not the right person.
All right. So it sounds like you really work best with people with some issues. They've been long-term issues. You mentioned sometimes whether it's breathing issues or snoring or they need a CPAP. Those are really the people with these underlying issues. They've had them for a while. And it sounds like what you do is really work with them to figure out what kind of root causes, and you bring in Buteyko breathing as one of the ways that you're working with people to really help them.
Absolutely. And with some of the people that have given me case studies I've posted on my Facebook page, they got stunning results. They did Buteyko breathing. I got them to do the daily exercises, every single one of them. And that helped with the stress, with the anxiety, with sleep, and it just made them more aware. You see, Buteyko for me has become like a meditation. I used to do transcendental meditation, did it twice a day, every day. My life changed. But over the years, there were other things came into play, such as breathing. You do pranayama or qigong. And so Buteyko brings me into the present moment within 5 to 7 minutes of doing the breathing set. And you really know it as you're doing it a couple of times during the day, how easy it is to become not present, get caught up in things, and even start speaking and hyperventilating. So that to me is a present moment meditation. And when I teach that to my clients, they're getting the benefit of that without needing to learn expensive meditation techniques or force themselves to meditate for an hour when people are really time deprived.
Right, I get it. How can people get in touch with you? I know I gave out the website before. Can you give it out one more time? Best way for people to get in touch with you.
Teyaskae.com, and I'm on Facebook. So love to connect and love to help people improve their breathing.
I like it. Any final words for our audience before we wrap up today?
Yes, to mothers that have kids with braces, with crooked teeth, who are mouth breathing and who are seeing orthodontist, because the dentist, most dentists are not aware of the breathing. Some will, but most won't. These kids don't have problem with their teeth. they have problem with the jaw because they're mouth breathers. So they need to learn Buteyko, because if they grow up and they're mouth breathing, they're going to be challenged at sport. They're going to be challenged with homework. They're going to be challenged kids. And I have worked with some teenagers who had constant anxiety. And I realized that, you know, on top of other issues that might have been contributing to anxiety, their breathing was hyperventilation. And so I had to get them to change their breathing pattern and to sleep in a different way. So yes, there are solutions, but whoever's mouth breathing, get them to nose breathe. Their life's going to change. You're going to improve the quality of their life, their health, and their mindset.
All right, that's a good message. It's interesting for me because it brings awareness to how much breathing is a part of our life, and there's better ways to do it. So Teya, once more, it's Teyaskae, teyaskae.com. Thank you for joining us today. Good information. And I'd like to thank everybody for listening, and I want to wish everybody great success in all areas of your life. We'll see everybody soon. Take care.